Okay, everyone, welcome to another one of the Cav and Carry Press readings. I am your host, Dimitri Reyes. I'm also the Marketing Communications Director at this lovely Cav and Carry Press publishing house. So tonight, for National Poetry Month, we have Lightfoot and Gibson Fay-LeBlanc reading with us. So just letting everyone know how the run of show is supposed to go tonight. Kali will go first. She'll be reading for 15 minutes. Afterwards, Gibson will be reading for his 15 minutes. Afterwards, the rest of the tonight's show will just be a Q&A. So what I like to do in the chat box, if you hear anything that just moves you, any beautiful lines, any great commentary, please put that in the chat box. And we'll save that towards the Q&A. If you have any other questions, you can put your questions in the chat box, and we'll also be doing that for the Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Kali Lightfoot. Kali Lightfoot lives in Salem, Massachusetts. She worked as a teacher, wilderness ranger in Washington State, executive at Rhodes Scholar, and most recently as founding executive director of the National Resource Center for Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes. Lightfoot earned an MFA in writing from the Vermont College of Fine Arts in 2015. Her poetry has appeared in journals and anthologies and been nominated for Pushcart Prizes by Lavender Review and Poetry South, and Best of the Net by Star 82 Review. Kali received an honorable mention in the SEPA Speculative Poetry Contest, and she has written reviews of poetry books for Broadsided Press, The Hopper, and Solstice. Without further ado, introducing Kali Lightfoot.
Thank you, Dimitri.
You're welcome.
And I have a sort of weird lighting situation here, so in order to see what I'm going to be reading and stuff, my face gets kind of washed out, but oh well. Has a kind of Vincent Price aspect to it. Thank you very much, all of you that have come tonight. I see some very familiar faces. And thanks to Cav and Carry Press for making this happen. My book came yesterday in the mail. And I'm excited to be reading with Gibson, who is, we were joking earlier, he's sort of the leader of the organization that I belong to, which is Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. And even though I'm in Massachusetts, I'm still a member. So I'm going to start setting the stage for this. I grew up in Kalamazoo. I see that Hetty's here from Kalamazoo. And I belonged, when I was in high school, to the Junior Symphony Orchestra, which was a really fine orchestra. Kind of a shock to me because I went from first chair in the high school band to fourth chair in the Junior Symphony. So, and this poem comes out of that experience, and it's called At 17. It was published previously under the title First Love in a journal. At 17, remember me from Junior Symphony? I played trumpet flourishes. You played the bassoon, ungainly pipe of exotic beauty, old glowing wood and ivory, metal keys, long curving metal tube and double reed that ended in your mouth, Elena MacLeod. Your breath gave us the sound of ancient forests moaning in the wind and gnarled trees laughing at the antics of magical beasts. Even during rehearsal breaks, the reed was in your mouth, nestled in a corner, staying moist. You made your own, a fiddly, persnickety process of shaving bamboo and wrapping it in special twine. Are you teaching music somewhere? Laughing a deep, rich bassoon laugh. I loved you, Elena MacLeod, the person of you, the sound of you, though I didn't know it then, could not have known it then, had no words to talk about it then. It took years to learn the language of myself, to accept my love of women, to understand the place your music took me, sitting amid the brass and wind and complicated strings. And some years after I was 17, I discovered alcohol, which got me nice and numb, and I didn't have to deal anymore with the fact that I was an odd being. um, and 3 days before my 40th birthday, I got tossed into rehab, and subsequently, 25 years later, on the 25th anniversary of sobriety, I wrote this poem, which is called Mystery. Oops. Let's try that again. Never mind. Mystery. The second step we take in AA is to believe in a power greater than ourselves. Newly sober, I tried to trust in a peaceful alpine meadow, then in the love of the AA group itself. Later, I embraced the Eastern pantheon, so different from the Trinity I had tried. And I learned Sanskrit chants and poems, but one day in meditation noticed that no matter how many verses I sang to the guru's sandals, it was always you who showed up, looking like Charlton Heston in the 10 Commandments, and maybe a little like my dad. Tall, feet planted, eyes on the horizon, the true man taking charge. Though I am grateful to know you at all, I really would like you to show up as someone else. Xena, the warrior princess, perhaps, or Helen Mirren looking lovely. A smart, strong woman in her 60s, but I seem to be stuck with you, the right-wing guy with granite tablets in one arm and a rifle in the other. You are not a God of compassion or comfort, but you are the God that has kept me sober all these years. And this poem is actually comes from Portland, Maine, where I wrote it. And it was a kind of tricky thing in editing because I had to try to get the editor to understand exactly where this bench was. And it's over at the community college, but on the bench above Spring Point Light is the name of this poem. And there is Fort Gorgeous appears in it. And Fort Gorgeous is not gorgeous as in beautiful, although it is. It is Fort Gorgeous as in Sir Ferdinando Gorgeous. So it's a last name. On the bench above Spring Point Light, Portland, Maine, Peaks Island ferry chugs across the harbor. Sailboats moored in middle distance swing into the wind like weather vanes. I lean back on a bronze plaque glinting in afternoon sun. Look for the heaven here on earth. It is a wartime gun emplacement, concrete and steel under wildflowers. Now the gun's long gone. Fort Gorgeous faces me, gun ports empty, on its rocky outcrop halfway to Peaks Island. Civil War long over, the fort is covered in green. Weapons placed here for strategic defense never fired a shot at enemies who never arrived. Anna and I sat here one summer night, the forts disguised with loveliness, sweet pea and salvia moving in warm wind, passers-by smiling at us in this place built for war and mayhem. Forts started waiting, or forts still waiting to take up our arguments of guns. We tried for beauty or peace and found instead the argument that ended us. And this is sort of a whiplash change of scene, but I have two Russian grandsons, and lucky to get to go to Moscow to pick up the youngest one when he was adopted at 16 months out of the orphanage in Moscow. And when we came back to the United States, there had to be another official activity of actually adopting Lucas here in the States. And that happened a couple of years after he came home. So this is called Family Court, and it is about that official happening. Family Court, Section 1. Everyone but Lucas cried the day he left the orphanage, too small to know he wouldn't see that door again. Not old enough to know the Russian for loss or future. He didn't know us, his new forever family. Section 2. 2 years and an ocean of paperwork later, we gather, nuclear and extended clan, 13 of us file silent, smiling into a room in need of smiles. Its everyday caseload a litany of divorce and disaffection. The judge sits with us in the gallery, not behind her desk. Lucas, do you like living with Mama and Papa? Yes. Do you like having a new big brother? It's okay sometimes. And Alexander, do you like having Lucas around? He rolls his eyes, mumbles something. Mute, we hold our breaths. Hope the judge remembers being young, has a sister. She winks and speaks her official words, then lets Lucas bang her gavel to adopt us. And going back to Maine, this is called 90 degrees. 90 degrees in Maine is a lot hotter to Mainers than it is in other parts of the country. And there isn't much air conditioning in Maine. And the condo that I lived in was on the 3rd floor with right above it a black rubber roof. So it got really warm in the 90-degree weather. And I had jury rigged some air conditioning because, you don't want to buy an air conditioner just for like the week that it's going to be hot. So that's about this is about that. 90 degrees. All things considered mutters to itself from the bedroom radio. Air moves from the conditioner out the guest room door, through a fan in the hall, and arrives half-hearted at the desk in the living room, where a writer sits, thinking of new ways to say hot, humid. The room is dark from narrow slatted mini blinds closed tightly against sun beating on a whole scorching rank of windows. NPR wafts in to announce the sale of a painting Gauguin made in South Pacific breezes 100 years ago. The writer muses on Gauguin, or more to the point, his women on the beach in Tahiti, dressed only, if at all, in bright colored cloth wrapped below their waists, breasts high and round, long dark hair pulled back from their faces. Then unbidden, the flab-chested homeless guy who yesterday sat on a stoop across from the bookstore swims into view, shirtless, stomach hanging over his belt, chasing the Tahitians into the trees behind the beach, where the air is surely cooler. The writer sighs, stands up, flaps the hem of her t-shirt, and walks to the kitchen for a glass of cool, iced, glacial, brisk, crisp. And one more. This is the final poem in my book, and it's going to be the final poem for my part of the reading. The one little bit about this one, I had sent it in for publication and it was accepted in a journal, and I got a note from the editor saying, asking me if I'd be willing to change the fruit that is mentioned in the first line, because it was originally pumpkin. And then later on, there's the term orange happens later on. And this was right after Donald Trump was elected. And she felt that this poem would take on a whole other political meaning if the pumpkin was left in there. So you'll see what happened to it. Star stuff. The apples will not care that I did not walk this morning, or never learned a second language, or read Proust, or was not a better supervisor. Knowing that atoms of my body come from stars that died 5 billion years ago. And that's my cat who was just about to come through here. Knowing that atoms of my body come from stars that died 5 billion years ago and will be available 5 billion years from now in some other body or star or drop of water or apple lying in the orchard path. Ah, Oscar, is oddly comforting. Red and purple sunsets from the bluff above the pond, or Katahdin on a full moon night, or silent nights sung by candlelight, or the smiles of my grandsons will be of no consequence to a drop of water. I will be as dust drifting on a solar wind beyond atmosphere and planet, untroubled and unconscious, this much worried, much loved life. Atoms strewn across a galaxy of galaxies. That's it.
Wow, thank you so much, Callie. That was amazing. I love what happens. So I love most of the things that can happen on a Zoom call. So the fact that I see a myriad of different cattails that happens on a daily basis, in a bunch of different ways, it's excellent. So I'm so glad I was able to see your cat make an appearance. I was so glad to hear you read, especially the last poem. And it is funny, we'll talk about that, how single words could kind of change the direction of an entire dialogue, right? So I can see what would have happened there in the larger scope of something being more orange, for instance, right?
Yes.
We'll talk about that. So Kali, you're getting a bunch of love in the chat box. There are a couple questions for you already if you want to look at those for later.
Okay.
Thank you for your reading as always. And I can't wait to hear from you soon. So now let me go on to Gibson. Hey, Gibson.
Yay.
So Gibson's first collection of poems, Death of a Ventriloquist, University of North Texas 2012, won the Vassar Miller Prize and was featured by poets and writers as one of a dozen debut collections to watch. Well, now everyone's watching Gibson again with his new collection. His poems have appeared in magazines including Guernica, The New Republic, Tin House, Field, and the Literary Review. He currently serves as the executive director of the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance and lives in Portland, Maine with his family. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Gibson.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thanks, everybody. It's really great to look out and see a lot of familiar faces here tonight, and a lot of folks I don't know too. Yeah, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone at Calvin Carey Press for making the book happen, making this happen. I don't have mine in my hand yet, like you, Callie, but I know it's coming relatively soon, so I'm looking forward to that day. And it's really just a pleasure to hear those poems tonight. So, and I'm going to read 8 or 9 poems from my book, which is called Deke Dangle Dive, as Dimitri mentioned. And I start most readings by explaining that title, which is okay. For those people who've never played ice hockey in their lives, especially the word deke might be an unfamiliar one. Sometimes it gets used in other sports, but a deke is just a fake. It's going one way and then going the other way. And I started the journey with this book about 8 years ago, and started writing poems out of my childhood of playing hockey. And right around that time, or not too long after, my brother got real sick with cancer. And we thought initially that he'd probably have a few months at best to live. And he wound up living for 8 years, which was a tremendous blessing. He died last summer, and this book is dedicated to him. But all that's to say, the hockey poems became about more than hockey. They became about brotherhood and what it means to be a man in today's world, and a father, and all sorts of other things. So that stuff is all swirling around here, and you'll hear it in the poems. So this is the first poem in the book, Wing and a Prayer. Hook me up to a current I felt once. Birdsong so quiet it seemed an echo of birdsong, or a creek made of air the same temperature as a body, a silent humming I walked through. I'm supposed to let whatever happens be what I want, but I still want my brother's cells to stop their war on each other. I want a poet I missed too much when here. I want the body of a woman down this block to come back so she can see her kids grow up and they know they're seen. Deep in my shallow root system, all of this is so far beyond my small tangle of electric streets where one raindrop pushed to one side of one honey locust leaf can mean somewhere someone dies of thirst, and somewhere else thunder becomes a god again. I always want rest. Oh, you godless godhead, positron, annihilation, ether, or stream, bottomless, unnameable. But I will sit here as long as it takes and watch for any drip, flutter, or tick that could be your approving nod. So this is a sort of a this is a poem that starts with hockey. It's not really about hockey, but it starts with a scene of my brother and I as kids. A very strong memory. It's called Unwritten. In a poem I haven't written yet, my brother convinces me to put on hockey equipment, helmet to girdle to knee pads, and shoots and shoots and shoots in the driveway, the puck bouncing off me. In the poem I haven't written for my brother, but plan to, we throw haymakers on a hill. He headlocks me on grass. I whip hard balls at his back. We scratch and gouge until a boy jabs his finger at me and my brother swings at teeth too big for that kid's mouth. In the poem, I won't let myself write. I say why I haven't written it, listing to my left with a tonnage in the bulkhead of bullshit that shifted, before admitting that I will see him with a little brother's eye, looking through isinglass. In the poem that doesn't exist, I smile rather than ask why one summer he slogged at Gold Coast dogs and walked the beach alone. I number the cracked bricks in our apartments and admit all nicknames he gave me, even G-string. I wish for red foothills, more hours we shared while our sons dueled with swords and wands and bikes and leapt from leaning forts. In the poem I don't write, and the one I'm left with, while the shadow of grander ones gestures on the wall, you're worried from sleep by phantom pain and real pain and scads of pills and insurance papers, and I get down on my knees and pray, Lee, to all I barely believe, because how else will there be decades ahead to be brothers in this poem I don't write, then don't write more. I should have mentioned, although it's pretty obvious that my brother's name is Leland. And so there's a few different threads in this book. There's, as I kind of alluded to, and in one of those threads, I did start to think more about this game that I grew up playing, that I still play, this game of ice hockey, and where it came from, both in terms of just like the origin of the sport and also in terms of language. This word hockey, it comes actually from the word hawk. It is any game with kind of a hooked stick. So anyways, this poem explores some of that origin. It's called Hawk, noun. Hawk doesn't sound like little purple flowers, cheap wine, or the last card in the box. But I did know a pawn shop near Wells and Elm, filled with the saddest gold. And on the second Tuesday after Easter, when old parishes once collected dues and rent with ale and balloons, some men would always stand behind the party with hooked sticks. I understand. As soon as we learned to fell a beast by cutting leg tendons, we knew it could be done to a human, meaning we evolved toward more efficient ways to hurt and lose what's buried in a name. I say hockey and forget the old flowered injury of the word, my game. All right, so there's also quite a number of poems of parenthood in this book. That is how I spend a fair amount of my time, even still. My boys are 15 and 12 now, but a lot of these poems were written when they were younger. So here's one from the fall season, the early Halloween season, early October. Already the zombie is gleeful in his feasting on the porch down the street. A severed skull lolls, and several outsized spiders wait in air above the steps with saber-tooth pinchers. And in a full 4 weeks, we'll walk, hollowed orange heads in our hands, soon filled with mounds and Snickers and almond joy. My one son, a bloody Coca-Cola. My other, an outlaw with pistol. And I'm the dad who turns off the 3rd school shooting this month. Police found 5 guns on him still to be fired, so that the villain and the can, 7 and 10, won't know this is their world. Though they hear, they know exactly how it is poured across whichever stage we walk. Blood-soaked porch, sure, blood-soaked streets and grass. Sure as they know, I'll smile and don a mask with dark fangs. Thanks for your comments, folks. I occasionally catch one out of the corner of my eye flying by, and it's nice to see. That's really the thing that I most miss with Zoom. I mean, it's wonderful we can get together across the country and see each other in this way, but I do miss those sounds that you get from the audience as you're reading. Maybe Zoom can figure out a way to incorporate those without making it too weird. Anyways, this is another hockey poem, and also not. The last game. The night my brother's hockey career ended, he dangled to and dazzled across the ice, furious scripts the other team couldn't read. When someone's will, maybe a coach's, was done. A nod, 2 words, number 9. This was 80s high school hockey. Better tape your fingers, hockey. Call the cops when the stand's empty, hockey. So one kid knelt behind my brother, and another cross-checked him over that knee. Whoever said the games we play don't have real stakes? Lee crumpled headfirst into the boards and lay there until a stretcher carried him. The doctor said a few millimeters in either direction would have snapped his neck. And now these doctors measure his game time in months, not years, not decades. My brother plays with cranial staples, infusions, endless forms, and learns the rules, penalties, and odds of loss. After that game, he left the team. I followed and stuck to empty Sundays, blasting Springsteen and slap shots on an unguarded net. This game we'd spent our childhood on, lines and circles, was gone. Our mom and dad about to split, our rooms filled with blue lines we never crossed. All right, I'm going to read 3 more poems, and then we will talk. This is called Going to Church, and I don't think it needs any explanation. Going to church. Church of the smallest word, church of the eyeball and robin's tuning morning light, church of dog tongue, of sidewalk riven by daisies, of a high and tight fastball, of the shape and smell of my beloved side of the bed, church of bricks that yesterday were building, of bread and butter and a bottle of beer, of creekstone and silver elm, of voices we hear, asking in the still dark for a body to give them breath. Church of a quaver carried thousands of miles and given to the tiny bones inside an ear. Screenless, windowless church of a twisting northern wind, of the night when a wall of trees too thick to see through called to my car. Of visions I shook from eyes and claimed I didn't see. I kneel here. I bring a tin cup of water to my lips. So 2 more poems. This one is part of a thread of poems in the book that is also, I think, contends with, and as maybe every poem does, but I feel like I certainly did a lot of this in writing these poems. It contends with, why do we write poems? Why? What's the point? You know, in the face of all sorts of things that we deal with in the world. And yet, so this and the poem, actually, this poem, I started with a line by the poet Wesley McNair, who lives here in Maine. He referred to a poem as a small handheld device. which I thought was pretty great. So I stole it, as one does. I gave him credit. The latest in nanotechnology. This small handheld device, perhaps crafted by microbes or robots the size of dust mites, who crawl with hammers thinner than hairs and lyres made of air into the ears of anyone who reads this, like you, in order to make a delicious, somber, jubilant nighttime trash can pebble thrown opera that unfolds across a screen the size of your eyes, the size of a sky just turned to blue dark, and now rising in windows the dark shapes of trees. So all the little birds tune their giant songs, and you too contain a song bigger than your body. Well, no, and yes. This is the newest technology, meaning ancient, an app with a code from the time of magic, which is a word we used when we couldn't understand how a thing leapt from a page like this one into your ears, into your throat, the words so old they're new and known and felt, green between fingertips, heat in the heart. And no, this paper will not sink with seawater. It is not compatible with certain chemicals or every tongue. It will not reforest vast tracts. It does not matter to anyone who doesn't enter this small and giant door, an entryway created to give permission to see of the small mistaken human endeavors which are now cranking. Begin again. All right, and I'm going to end, as Callie did, I believe, with the last poem in the book, which is called Dive. I don't think, I mean, I'll explain one quick thing that's in here just so you have it. I use the word spinorama, which is really just is a wonderful word, and it's just like what it sounds like. It's when a hockey player who has the puck is able to spin completely in a circle, like just while moving at a very fast speed and spin, and everybody is confused because it's beautiful and magical when somebody can do that. All right, dive. A new tumor on his heart doesn't sound like the ones on other organs. On his heart? And now, what treatment? Watch the clock? Follow a salt road out as far as its end? Remember he's still here? Send clips? A center's sick dangle showing what he makes disappear, or a wing who blurs by, blades and limbs, then spins 360 degrees outside time, spinorama. Send a heart emoji. In hockey, a dive is when a player acts hurt and falls so that the ref calls a penalty. Here it's something else. A brother dazzles, annoys, enrages, awes, leads his younger for 44 years. Then the elder begins a fall. Or maybe this descent only acted like other motion all along. Maybe all our motion is down. Where is that ref? What happens next? In this moment, then another, a center my brother skates off to find. Thanks, everybody.
I was clapping so much I couldn't unmute myself. Sorry. Gibson, that was amazing. Let me quote one more time one of the pieces from that Gabe put down. A brother dazzles, annoys, enrages, awes, leads his younger for 44 years, then the elder begins a fall. My goodness, what an ending poem. Thank you so much, Gibson, for that. And thank you, Callie, for being here, for both of us just like celebrating poetry during National Poetry Month. I did want to begin with one question that Gibson, you brought up. And for both, how does it feel to do readings on Zoom now without those oohs and the ums and the ahs and the snaps and the claps and then like that poet silence that happens sometimes when everyone's really listening? How do you augment that while you're just entrusting an audience that they are listening and they are tuning in while you're in your own box at home?
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard. When we started doing this, I realized how much I depend on the energy coming toward me from the crowd to kind of, place the words and stuff. And there's usually one or two faces that I latch onto when I'm reading to a group, kind of check them out. And it's really hard with these little squares because I can't really do that in the same way. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the focal point, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to check on that one person that you keep doing up and down, which Gibson, I did see you doing. Yep. So technically when you were going up and down, you were kind of just looking at yourself. So that's probably another meta thing as well. So explain that to us along with your answer.
I was thinking that as I started reading tonight, I was like, man, this is weird. I should turn that off. But what I did ultimately was I was looking at the top row so I could see some faces, and see a few reactions or just people intently listening. And, that's why we're here, right? I mean, is we want to make these things that people want to hear and say themselves. And it is a big challenge to not have that feedback happening in the room. Yeah.
Do both of you still get the moments though while you're reading? And by this I mean there's that moment as an author where you're wowed by something that you just said, or you're coming up on a really strong line. Do you still get those moments while sitting there?
For sure, I do. Yeah.
Well, and so while I was reading, Gibson's face was right up in the corner there, and you were reacting really nicely to things.
I can't help it. It all comes right here. So
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's the responsibility of the audience. If anyone's on that top part there, it helps that if you're still giving facial expressions because we're gonna see those,
Yeah.
So yeah, they definitely help. It's still a part of the participation, I guess, just without the noise. I will also say for our audience, guys, there was so many great comments that were coming out, and I know Gibson and Kali, you're not gonna be able to get to all of them. Just know that after the show, I do send you the chat. So you'll be able to see all the nice things everyone's been saying. So in the audience, if we haven't quoted you yet, or there wasn't a question, it'll eventually get told, or it'll eventually get seen when they get them to the chat. Let's go to the chat for the questions. This first one came in really early at 7:14 from Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan. Kali, what is your process to produce such apparently simplistic lines with such tremendous energy? Do the basic lines come to you? Or do you have to start with something large and then sculpt it down into the final poem?
It's all over the map, I'd say. I think what came to me as I read that question the first time around is my father used to walk around the house reciting the cremation of Sam McGee, which he knew by heart. And I don't know to what extent my simple lines that I come up with are influenced by the cremation of Sam McGee, but I think lines just appear. There's no particular way it happens. They just come, and then you start crafting, and start moving words around and start messing with it. But I usually, when a good line comes along, then it's really a good day. It's just nice.
Yeah. Definitely counting that win, right? Counting those as those blessings.
Right.
Gibson, I kind of want to pitch that over to you also. When you are crafting poems, because you also have these lines that are just statements that just kind of take folks' breath away, as we can tell in the chat. So how does that work? Is it like, Holly, do you come to those lines? I know they probably do sometimes, but how much are you massaging or chipping away at a poem to get to what you need?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of chipping for sure.
Mhm.
But I agree with Collie that for me there's often a line, and it's often it's something early in the poem. It might be the first thing that I write initially that seems to vibrate a little bit. Like it has a music to it, or it contains something more. It's almost like it's sometimes like a line can contain almost like the whole poem in it. That sounds
Mm,
weird to say, but
Yeah.
I think it can. And then if I can get going and just sort of get into the music of it, then all sorts of unexpected things can happen. And then sometimes I get to that helps me get to things that I wouldn't, just by following the music of it, I
Mhm.
can get to something that is surprising to me, unexpected, and that's interesting,
mm. Getting that line and then just following the music and following that idea until you could arrive at something, which is really interesting because I'm sure that there's other poems that you want to sit down and write and you start grasping at straws until you finally get that one line that's really good, right? And you're like, okay, this is the one line I could actually take from the session. So it's really funny how that
Yeah.
works, right? This actually goes into another question, which was also for Kali, but this happened so early that I feel like we could use it in Gibson's work also. And this question was, the vivid description of place as means to personal epiphany is breathtaking. So is the epiphany intentional, or how long do you have to go through the poem, go through the scene, go through the world building before you get to hit that epiphany?
Well, for me, if it's an epiphany, it means that it just happens. I mean, it's,
Mm,
I'm writing along, I'm writing something, I start describing something, and all of a sudden there's something in it that I didn't know was there. It's like um, I think it's in Betsy's class, I took a number of classes from Betsy Scholl, and read, as part of that, I read the Triggering Town book
mm,
by Hugo, and
mm,
that's his whole thing is, you just follow the poem along and things happen. And, if I decide I'm going to write to something, to an ending, or try to create an epiphany out of all this, it's usually a complete failure,
mm.
because it really, the poem, it just, I don't know, it's hard to describe.
No, it's crazy because basically what you're saying is that the poet themselves has to experience the epiphany for it to even exist, which is wild. Because in the beginning of that answer, you said that epiphanies just happen because they are epiphanies. So,
Yeah,
we walk into there wanting that ends to a means, but we're constantly following that. We're following that triggering subject
yeah.
from
I
Richard
have
Hugo's The Triggering Town.
I'm just thinking about this one poem I've been trying
Yeah.
to write for 12 years, I think, 10 years. I've been hammering away at that thing because, I want to somehow get across this epiphany that I had,
Mm.
but because I'm so focused on bringing the poem to that, I'm not getting there. I can't get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. We'll toil over these poems for such a long time, just trying to
Yeah.
get that right sentiment or right feeling. Thank you, Gibson. So, how do you get to your epiphany through like this world building or through that imagery? Does it happen or?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, it takes, for me, you know, if there's any epiphany, it's often happening toward the end of a poem, and the endings of poems are so hard, and
Yeah.
kind of to what Kali was just saying, I often find myself, I call it, realize I'm gripping the steering wheel too tightly,
Mm,
like I'm trying to steer somewhere, and it just doesn't work, or I might think it works, and then I bring it to my writing group and they say no, that doesn't work. um, and For me, often time is really important to put something away and sort of let go of that like idea that I might have had about where it needs to go,
mhm,
and just loosen those hands on the wheel a little bit and see. one of my teachers was Lucy Brock Broido, and
Oh wow.
wonderful poet, and she talked about at the end of the poem, she would sometimes ask people to do the opposite of what they thought they wanted to do,
Mm,
to say the opposite
Yeah.
thing, you know, to literally just cut
Huh.
in the opposite direction, because um, you know, sometimes that's what you need to do to sort of let go a little bit more at the end of the poem, and see kind of where the poem wants to go.
that's a really great point. Just kind of flipping something on its head, or just like taking the idea and almost and that's a kind of, I guess, where the epiphany and the surprise is kind of like a cheat code too,
Mhm.
to get that to epiphany or surprise. I do have a question that goes right into that. So Gibson, it's perfect that we were on that subject. Before we get there, I want to know though, just really quick, like a lightning round question. What's the longest poem you've still been working on that's a draft?
Mm.
Gibson and then Collie.
Oh, good question. Um, I I oh, I have some that are, at least I'd have to like go back and look and see like when did I make the first file, you know, or find the first draft in my notebook.
Mhm.
But I'm sure I have some that are 6, 7, 8 years old that I'm still like not. I know I'm not done with, but
Yeah.
they're sort of just simmering there.
So
Yeah,
much fun.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
much fun. It is. But walking away, you have the fun when you walk away and then you come back and you stay there, you're gripping it too tightly, it's too visceral still, right? So
right.
yeah, the space is good. For all the writers, the space is good. Kali, longest draft you're sitting on.
Um, I think the one I was just talking about, or I thought I was talking about.
Mhm.
I have a great first line, which is the around the mountain trail only went halfway around. And
Mm,
it's about this lava flow on Mount Adams that I've been trying to write about for, I'd say 2010, I started working on that. So,
wow. Oh, so much fun.
and
I love that.
I just went through two more drafts recently and two separate workshop things. I still haven't got it. So
The chasing of that poem, the
I know.
dangling carrot of that
Yes.
poem always. All right, so Gibson, back to you now, and thinking about the opposites. So this is from Gabe. Your imagery and poems seem to carry the impact of body to body, stick against puck. How do you feel the physicality of something so masculine of a sport as hockey, and how that lends itself to emotion and poetic expression?
Um, yeah, I mean, I can say a few things about that. One is that I do, so taking hockey even out of the equation for a second, I love poems that are physical, that push me into my body, that remind me that I have a body, um, that's moving through space, and um, so anyways, I feel like those are a lot of poems that I love written by other people, are poems that do that,
Mm,
um, and something I'd like to think that I try to do as well. And I think in writing the poems about hockey, I really wanted to. I mean, I I'm still playing hockey at the age of almost 47, and hoping to play into my old age here.
yeah.
Um, because I just love it, like I love speed, and I love being out there, and I have to play it in a different way than I used to, but I just love to do it. Um, and so I just wanted to get some of that into the poems, find a way to get that physicality into the language. Um, and it's really important to me as I started writing these hockey poems, it was really important to me to model, something which is that, like, yeah, you can be a hockey player who loves poetry. You can be a hockey player who tells, your brother that you love him. You can be a hockey
Yes.
player who isn't an asshole,
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so, like, I think that part is really important to me. And I have, two young hockey players in this house, and that's part of,
Yeah.
when we talk about that, like
So
there's a
good.
way to do this. Any of these games that are thought of as masculine or whatever,
Mhm.
um, there's so much more to us than you know, these kind of narrow ways that we often look at
Right.
things. And so I want my poems to represent some of that feeling
And it's
life.
so mold or generational paradigm of hyper mask things.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. You heard it here, folks, from Gibson, right? You don't have to be a hockey player and be an asshole. Take that. Okay, so it is 8 o'clock. This is usually our break off time, but this is kind of when our session turned into a VIP session. We'll be on for a couple more minutes, just going through the rest of the questions. So feel free, participants, to hang out. I always want to end with this one question before I do that. Elena, our marketing assistant, thank you so much for dropping that link. As a reminder, both books are on sale for 20% off still. You can get Callie Lightfoot's Pelted by Flowers, 20% off. And Gibson Fay-LeBlanc's book is on pre-sale, is on pre-order right now. So if you secure your copy when the book comes out on May 4th, may the 4th be with you, you will have that book to have and to read and to cherish. So definitely do those pre-orders. They'll be in the link down below. I do want to end with this question before we just take on extra questions and maybe read another poem. If you could look at your collection right now and you only had a choice of one song to define your book, basically the theme song for that book, what would that song be?
I had a whole month to think about this. So.
You did. You did.
But it came to me immediately, and I hope this will not offend anyone. But the song that came into my head was "Drop Kick Me, Jesus, Through the Goalposts of Life."
You got to give us a little bit of an explanation there. That's rich.
Well, it's an old country western song. It's a wonderful old song. And I actually looked it up, got the words the other day, but it's the line, it's just "drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life." And then it goes on sort of in that frame. And that's really, I kind of feel that way about life. My life has been a series of serendipitous happenings. That, you know, I have a master's degree in physical education that started the whole thing, and I ended up as a wilderness ranger, and I ended up as a therapist, and I ended up in, you know, and all of those have simply been saying yes to somebody at the right moment, or, you know, just seeing something go across that looked like a job I might like, and I got it, you know, and then all of a sudden I was a wilderness ranger. You know, and what the hell is that? And I'm afraid, I am afraid of the dark. I have always been afraid of the dark. And there I was on a 38,000 acre wilderness area all by myself.
Yeah.
For 10 days at a time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Before we all got on, you last month, you know, I was talking to you and Andrea about all those shows I watched, like I Shouldn't Be Alive or I Survived This, where people are stuck in the wilderness. And this little city boy like me thinking of being like a nature ranger in the wilderness, my goodness. And for you to just fall into those things, it's so interesting though in life how we just fall into things, right? Yeah. We're literally drop kicked, as you were saying, into these different things. It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. But thank you for sharing. Thank you, Gibson.
All right, so I didn't have a month to think about this. I had a little while, but I did appreciate the heads up, Dimitri. And I'm gonna cheat just a little bit. Because I find the one song thing really hard, and I think that's kind of the point. But especially because I think I in my book, in a lot of the poets that I read and love, I really love range. You know, I really love to see a range of stuff. You know, of tones, of ways of talking, of kinds of language. So I was thinking, I just thought immediately of a singer-songwriter here in Maine by the name of Max Garcia Conover, who's just a wonderful singer-songwriter who has a big range. Like there's, you know, this sort of elegiac stuff, there's playful stuff, there's kind of faster staccato stuff. And that kind of range is what I'm often after in my work. So that's what I'm going to go with, his work. And he was on my mind because I'm going to be doing an event with him for Maine people in June, where we
Oh,
trade
nice.
poems and songs. So outside, an in-person event. So
Oh,
anyways,
wow.
Nice.
yeah.
That's excellent. Gibson, send me the link to that. And speaking of sending the link to that, anyone that's still here, Elena, drop down our newsletter link. If you sign up to our newsletter, you'll get updates when we have cool things happening like this with our authors. So definitely make sure you're tuned into that. That's so cool. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in the future for the series, I'll ask them to. That'd be easier.
Yeah.
Kali, do you think
Yeah,
I
an
made it
album would be
difficult?
easier, I think.
Okay. So maybe I'll do an album next time. That might be easier, and I'll give him some more lead time. Kali came here with it, but Gibson, yo, you did a really good job.
Yeah.
I didn't let you know, like, last month, so that was perfect. Cool. So, Kali, Wing and a Prayer. The echo is so powerful. Was this a poem? Was this a way to ground your poem?
That's
That's
me.
Gibson.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Gibson.
That's all right.
My apologies.
What was that? Wait, I lost track. What was the question again? What was the ground?
So, was the echo in the poem used to ground your poem?
Yeah. Um, yeah, the echo of, yeah, that yes, I think that was a poem. That's a poem that went through a lot of drafts. And I think wanted to be a prayer, and I was also kind of resisting it being a prayer. In any kind of traditional way. So
Hmm.
I think I latched onto that title as a way to kind of have the different impulses in that poem be joined together, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Definitely. And I'm seeing all the chat conversations like molding into each other. So Kali was right under that. So that was the confusion. So Kali, this is your question, not the other one. So Kali, what starts your writing of a poem? The opening image or the ending line?
I don't think I can answer that.
I think it might depend on the poem, right?
Yeah, it depends on the poem, and sometimes I, start off in one direction and end up somewhere else entirely. So
Right. And I think we kind of
yeah,
covered that too, and talking about
yeah,
like the image and then where to really go with it afterwards, like the chasing of the
yeah.
triggering subject.
Hmm.
Okay, let me see. What are the concrete and abstract imageries that come to mind in your poems? Oh, okay, so this is an interesting one. I'll kind of morph this question a little bit. Um, when we're coming to poems, are we kind of thinking the abstract thought of the feeling, or are we linked to place before the
Never.
poem?
No, I'm not thinking the abstract thought thing. I'm thinking about looking at this tree out here. You
Mm,
know, and,
yeah,
and then it leads into sort of metaphor or whatever else is coming along. But if I start abstract, it's hard to get out of that.
it's hard to write, kind of like even write your way out of it, right? Like
Yeah,
once you start, it kind of snowballs.
right. It's
Mm,
like the last poem I read, that's about it, as abstract as you can get because it's death, you know.
hmm
But it really starts with the apples and the pumpkins and where it goes from there. So
Yeah. Okay, good. I got a comment for that too. I'll let Gibson actually. Gibson, you could feel that too. So, are you also coming from the concrete, or can you start from the abstract and then you kind of find solid images from it?
Yeah, I've got to have the concrete in there. I mean, sometimes I might have a question or a feeling or something that's in the background, but oftentimes I don't really know what that is. And the way that I
yeah,
figure it out is through the image, through wherever I am or whatever I'm seeing in front of me, and really getting into the detail of those concrete images. Yeah.
yeah, because a lot of times I think I'm trying to figure out how I feel about something, or
Yeah.
what it means to me.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So you know what? We've kind of reached the end. I do want to say one more thing since this is going on YouTube. I always like to end with one last statement from each author. And one that keeps occurring is if you could give like an author that is writing that one piece of golden nugget of information, what's one piece of advice you'd give to an author that's beginning to write or one that's still trying to get their first collection together?
I would say just I remember I spent a lot of time when I was younger worrying about like when I was working or how much I was working or what I was doing or and I think I've learned to just like relax a little bit and whatever time you have, half an hour a day, on your walk, like it doesn't, I don't think, I think the consistency of effort and like of thinking and trying to make something over a long time is for me more valuable than a month at some fancy residency or something. I mean those things are great too, but like just take whatever time you have in the life that you have that you can set aside for some making and just do it at whatever level, and just keep doing it a little bit, just chip away, and things will happen.
Yeah, get the work done the way you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like know yourself, know your responsibilities, know your space. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. Kali?
I totally agree with what Gibson just said. And the other thing, which sounds like it's the opposite, is finding a community. That it's really important to find some people that are working at it, are serious about it, are wanting to get their work out into the world, if that's what you want to be doing, because it's so important. I mean, I've been the funny thing about getting my book right now is that I've been rejected from everywhere for the last few months. I've been sending stuff out and it's just nothing sticking anywhere. And and so I have other friends who are doing the same thing, and we're all commiserating with each other. And I think I would have quit long ago, if that hadn't been true. And it's just really fun, to feed off of, to riff off of other people and to have other people that are seeing the world, because usually poets are a little odd, we see things differently than a lot of people. And to have other people that get that is really important.
Definitely. Yeah. Like having a sense of community and having your own community, right? Especially because poets and writers generally, they speak their own vocabulary. They have a certain way of language or seeing things. Yeah. So it's great when you're a poet in the world and you run into a random person and you find out they're a poet. All of a sudden, both of you know, I'm seeing things the way you're seeing things. And it's like one of the greatest feelings ever.
I mean,
awesome.
Somebody else who gets excited about dictionaries.
Yeah, words, comma splices. Show me a good comma splice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for this evening. Thank you for the participants for staying here. As a matter of fact, participants, please, everyone just go unmute, say what you want to say, clap it up, and just, give us a good goodbye on the way out.
This is so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well done.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I had a bad day. This is really good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you, Gibson and Kylie.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
So wonderful to hear the poems read, after all the work that each of you put in, and helping get them out into the world